Welcome, 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 everyone. I'm so excited to have you here. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have Kristen, our founder and CEO. She has more than 20 years of experience developing software, with 10 of those explicitly involved in the field of environmental compliance. She's built technology used by small businesses, global corporations, major utilities, government agencies, nonprofits, and academia. With degrees, this one kills me, both in mechanical engineering and in law. It was in coding that she actually found her passion. And to date, the Wildnote platform has been used to collect, manage, and report environmental compliance data on 5 continents in 35 US states, and users have submitted more than 116,000 surveys and 186,000 photos and exported more than 36,000 reports.
Wow.
Yeah, surprise yourself.
A lot of stuff.
And also joining us as a panelist is Jeff Aramospe. Jeff has been with Wildnote since December of 2020. He's accomplished a lot in a few months as Chief Revenue Officer. Based on his experience leading multiple cloud-based enterprise software companies, Jeff brings unique insight into both the customer's journey when acquiring technology and the developer's journey when building a technology. Formerly as CEO at Spanning Cloud Apps, Jeff specialized in products providing backup and data protection for SaaS applications. Prior to Spanning, Jeff led Manticore Technology, a pioneering marketing automation platform company. Jeff's domain expertise in SaaS, cloud computing, sales and marketing automation, and data protection helps him guide companies to acquire the right software at the right time in order to grow and prosper.
Thank you.
And Nancy Douglas, many of you know the voice and probably the face. She is our Director of Customer Success at Wildnote. As one of the founders of Wildnote, she's acquired a deep understanding of the complexities surrounding the projects that have environmental compliance requirements. With this knowledge, she is able to bridge the gap between the company's projects and the people with Wildnote environmental compliance automation platform, ensuring successful training and implementation, and ensuring a positive transition to digital technology. All that's a lot of words to say. Nancy's happy when you're happy, and she's really good at it. And I'm Rini. I'm your host for today's episode. I come from a background of over 30 years in the software industry. I've worn just about every hat imaginable, from coder to implementer to customer support and to now sales and strategy. I love them all. When Kristen told me about what she was doing with Wildnote, I jumped on board and never looked back. I really love working with the environmental professionals, and I love helping you save time on the tedious tasks so you can focus on your area of expertise. The things that you guys do are difficult, and it's nice when you can really focus on them. So that said, let's get started. So first, I want to thank Kristen and Jeff and Nancy for joining today and offering their expertise. Clearly, we have a lot of experienced professionals when it comes to both building software and purchasing software. So why are we here today? Why are we talking about build versus buy? Well, the simple answer is we get this question all the time. And so I'm going to pose it to you, Jeff. Over the last several months, you've been talking to several folks. Can you share with us some of the things that you've heard from people, some of the problems they've come across, and some of the successes that we've been able to help them with?
Sure. I've rolled into the job here at Wildnote and started talking to customers and prospects in the environmental consulting industry. The thing that we've seen is that they're all looking for something that can make the business more efficient. So, they want to be able to better collect the data, better manage the data on the environmental compliance projects that they're working on, and then find a way to, make it easy to create reports and turn that data into useful information that can achieve some end, either, get permits offered or prove that they're in compliance with whatever the regulations are, all that good stuff. And so when people are tackling that, they kind of do it in multiple ways. They either go after a very specific application that solves a specific problem, like wetland delineation or SWIP monitoring or something like that. And there are lots of apps out there that do those sorts of things. Or they look for something that's a little bit more perhaps generic in terms of what it can provide with respect to the data collection, management, and reporting piece. So they turn to something like a Fulcrum or ArcGIS, or maybe even perhaps build their own solutions out of their own SQL database, and they go write some stuff in .NET or JavaScript or Python or whatever it is that they're working with in their specific environment. What we found is that most people have tried one of those two things and they're not getting exactly what they need. And so what we found that they're looking for is what we're calling an environmental compliance automation platform, or ECA. That's what we believe that we provide at Wildnote. We're not the only people that do that. There are other people that are out there doing this as well. And the key for this is that what you're looking for, they tend to be looking for, is a platform that supports all of the disciplines that are in an environmental consulting. If you're an environmental compliance or consulting a firm of any size, you do more than wetland delineations. You also do, biomonitoring, or you, do ongoing construction monitoring for, compliance purposes, or you do cultural work, looking for artifacts and those sorts of things on construction sites. And so what they're looking for is something that sort of solves all of those needs. We just recently had a company that focuses on cultural and paleontology work. And that company had tried another solution out there. They had found a forms company that let them take their forms and go send them in. They turned them into something that let them access this all online, let them collect data on a mobile device, but it had no flexibility for them. Anytime they needed a change in the form, they had to send it off to the company, wait for it to come back. It would sometimes take months. So they were looking for something that was much more flexible. And for them, an environmental compliance automation solution was sort of exactly what they need. So, sort of an industry specific platform, but not something that's so narrow that it only does one of the things that an environmental consultant might do, but is something that takes care of kind of 80–90% of the technology work, so that they can really focus on the 10 or 20% that sets them apart and lets them go ahead and sort of optimize the technology to support their broader business process. So that's what we see people are looking for.
Great, thank you, Jeff. We really do see a large spectrum of what people have tried and what's working or not working. It seems to me like most folks are not actually trying to build something from scratch. Rather, they're doing what you were describing of bringing together things from other forms, maybe fillable PDFs, maybe a mapping, and bringing it possibly into their own database and then trying to figure out how to format a report. So I want to share with you a 30-second piece from one of our customers.
We did explore Art Collector and Survey 1, 2, 3 for a solution prior to coming to Wildnote. We absolutely did. We tried to get it done in-house. We couldn't get it done. The complexity of the forms that we were trying to recreate and the automation that we were trying to create, we couldn't get it done. So this is why I'm here.
Every time I see that clip, I'm jealous of Dylan's beard, by the way.
Yeah, he's quite a character, but he really has been through a lot trying to make things work. And it was really exciting when we could help him out. So let's get into the nuts and bolts a little bit here, Kristen. You've, as people heard from your intro, you've had several successful software implementations in the compliance automation world. Can you share with us some of the elements that you think are key to those successes?
Yeah, so when building a technology solution, whether it involves a straight up greenfield build with software from scratch or potentially merging together various technologies into a solution, I think that the first key element is staff. Do you have the key staff in place to make this successful? And I find to be the most important role player, because I played that role in my whole career, was the translator. Do you have that translator? Do you have somebody who can talk to the field staff and the project managers and then talk to the tech people and speak both languages. That is a really important role to happen. I can tell you, when you have field staff talking just to devs or tech, there can be a lot lost in translation. So it's really good to have that translator. It could be your project manager. It's just that they need to have both those skills. And of course, you need the tech team, right? Do you even have the tech team in place? Now, that tech team could be local. It could be your IT department. It could be offshore development. It could be nearshore development. So, but do you already have that in place, or is that something you're actually going to be going to look for, which is a bit of a lift just to find a team you can successfully collaborate with? The third piece is, do you have someone who can be in charge of quality assurance? Because software is an iterative process, and you don't get it right just out of the box the first time in terms of quality as well as functionality, UI and UX, meaning user interface and user experience. So do you have a QA person to give a look at things before those field folks or those project managers are subjected to utilizing the software? And one of the things I've noticed is of those people, are they billable? And do you have a certain utilization requirement on those people? Meaning they need to be 80% utilized. And so then they're trying to fit in 20% of their time in actually building technology that's going to support your really important processes. And the other thing is, what priority would your tech team put on the project, right? We often think that an internal tech team would prioritize their other teams, internal teams more, but we've heard stories when in fact they weren't prioritized. Maybe there was a favoritism going on. Maybe there's one project they're into and another they're not, and so that project's not prioritized. So really understanding what kind of priority your tech team will have. And then the other really important thing, and this was a new development in software development, was how close is your technology team to your field staff? And I mean physically, I mean spiritually, I mean emotionally, and I mean experientially, okay? Has your tech team actually been out in the field? Does your tech team understand what these people are going through when they're out in the field? They've got mosquitoes biting them, it's hot as hell, and they're trying to look at a mobile device and it's hard to see, and they're feeling pressure to collect data. Like, are those things that the people building the technology have a feel for and an understanding? One more thing is, are you used to running iterative sprint-like projects, right? 2-week sprints where you iterate, you fix, you iterate, and you go, instead of some long 3-month thing where you're trying to get to the end. And finally, do you have an appetite to keep improving and maintaining the software or the technology that you built?
Can I chime in there and just say, it's not just on the field side of being close to your field people, it's also on the PM side, the project manager side, and what they have to go through to get a deliverable out. So it's the whole spectrum really that needs to be understood. And often what we see is it's just one little niche of that. If there's understanding, it's one little piece of that continuum, and the other pieces get left out. I'm thinking about a project that we worked on. It was a long-term project, and one company had built their own internal solution, and it was great for mobile data collection, but they hadn't cracked the nut of the export side. So they were still losing a lot of efficiency and time on that part of it. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, Nancy, that's really great. I was thinking about the same thing, that like the environmental compliance automation is more than just data collection, obviously, but a lot of times people really focus on getting the data in. What are you going to do with the data? Is it good quality? What are you going to do with photos? How are you going to get them out to the reports? So that's really like the big picture that I think is super important. So we've talked about that, the whole compliance automation process, from data collection to report, as well as the spectrum of solutions people are trying, from niche app to bringing pieces together, to using an industry kind of specific like Wildnote that's really catered to people's needs, and then to just like totally custom building from the grassroots up. So Jeff, you're really great at understanding problems and kind of distilling decisions to be made. Not to put you on the spot.
That's debatable, by the way. That's debatable.
That's debatable. so far,
Okay.
in my experience. And so not to put you on the spot, but can you sort of bring together the main areas to consider and to like balance when you're looking for a software solution?
Sure. So I think, I like to think about the problem in sort of three buckets. And, three buckets are, do you have the right people, which we, Kristen and Nancy just covered really, really well. Do you have the right processes? And then once you understand those two things, now you can make decisions about what you need with respect to the technology. One of the interesting things to me about environmental compliance or the environmental consulting industry, and some things that I just learned since I've been involved in this, is that there tends to be a whole lot of variability in the process. People collect data in different ways. They, format that data and they manage that data in different ways. And then they, deliver the reports that they need for that data in different ways. Some of it's driven, frankly, by the regulators, right? I mean, we've got the Army Corps that's got, 10 different regions, and each region basically has slight differences and changes to their different forms for wetland delineation. I mean, come on, standardization is a good thing. People ought to think about this stuff along the way. I mean, so that drives things. So when we look at the cultural world, you've got a similar, sort of problem in that, the forms from the Department of Parks and Rec for handling cultural issues in California are different than the ones that we see in Nevada, and are different than the ones that we see in Utah, and are different than the ones we see in Arizona. And I name all those because obviously those are 4 states in which we've done projects and we have forms for all of those. So, some of that's driven by the regulation side. Then you even see it, but the other thing is that within companies, people do things differently. Now, part of it is because of what happens, in the various different states or different localities that people need to worry about that. But sort of the broader part is that because a lot of these, especially these larger environmental consulting companies, grew by acquisition, they wanted to allow their individual groups to sort of have some autonomy and do what they want to do. But again, as we said at the start of this, what people are looking for is efficiency. And you can't get efficiency unless you can have some level of standardization. So we really need to have people thinking about their processes and being committed to, at least with respect to the way the data is collected and the way the data is managed, establish standard processes. Once you've done that, now you can pick the right technology to go support it, right? Now that would make it easier for you to go build it yourself. But what it really needs to do is sort of direct you towards looking for a platform that can support the multiple disciplines in your business and define a set of standard business processes that take advantage of the underlying technology that's there. If you get those first, sort of the collection and the management part right, what's actually as easy is the output side, because it's relatively easy for a good environmental compliance automation platform to be able to say, I'm going to output this wetland delineation information for the arid West, and I'm going to do it, which is a different set of forms than what I might use for the Gulf Coast. So those are sort of the kinds of things that a platform can ultimately help you with. So, refine your processes, focus on them, and get them to take advantage of the new technology that you've got. And then the other key thing is, and this is back to the people side, you need to make sure you've got the support and training in place that you need. Companies adopting this should define subject matter experts and assign subject matter experts who have a deep understanding of the platform and how it relates to their environmental compliance business in each of their disciplines. So they should have a wetland person and a cultural person and a bio person, et cetera. And you could even break it down, further than that. Clearly, flying things are different than crawly things, right? When you think about how you do bio sorts of projects. So those are the kind of things that I think that they should think about around these dimensions.
Great, thanks, Jeff. I knew you'd come up with a good one. People, process, and technology. It's so true, and to keep those in balance, and like the 3-legged stool to support the other one. So we talked to folks trying to implement environmental compliance solutions quite a bit. I was thinking about food the other night, one of my favorite subjects. So there's TV dinners, right? Ready to go, hits the need, adequate. Then there's like a really nice restaurant with a specific cuisine. You can get whatever you want, make your full meal. And then there's some new things like Blue Apron, where you can order what you want and then kind of customize on top of that and make it yours without a lot of effort. And then at the far end of the spectrum, there's make your own recipe, go to the grocery store, get the ingredients, come back home. Sure, you can make it whatever you want, but you're starting from scratch. So I was, and then it made me think of the recipe. When I love to cook, but I look at a recipe and I look at that little box that says estimated time 20 minutes. And I know it's going to take me like 3 times as long every time. I'm not a professional chef. So I was thinking software is kind of like that, right? Like people, we have a lot of smart people. Most of you guys are PhDs or masters at best, at worst, I mean. And so like, yeah, I can do a spreadsheet. I can make a software program. I can make a database. And it's true. A lot of folks can do that, but you're unless you have a devoted software team, you're going to run into surprises. You're going to run into challenges. You're going to run into hidden costs. They're overcomable, but maybe that's not the best place to put your efforts. So Kristen, I'm hoping that you can share with us some stories or your experience around challenges and surprises and hidden costs that people have come to you with to help them overcome.
Well, first, are we the Blue Apron of environmental compliance automation?
I think we might be.
I think that's what she just said.
Okay, I got that. I got that one. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, the first bad news is something called the 80-20 rule, and it takes 20% of the time to get 80% there. And unfortunately, sometimes 80% of the time to get that last 20%. And I mean, I've lived this hell every day, honestly, because we're having to get to the last 100%, that last 20% when we're building things here at Wildnote. And so that's sort of a hidden cost, because you get 80% of the way there, you're thinking, whew, this is great, I'm jamming. And then you get to the nuances and the edge cases and the harder parts and the less than 5% rule. And then, oh, it's different in this region than this region. And oh, wait, we got to collect this kind of data for this one, but this kind of data for this other one. And so all of a sudden, all of these nuances come into play. And that's why that last 20% can be quite difficult. And along those lines, as programmers, we are constantly underestimating the amount of time it takes to complete something. So we have a standard rule. We times it by 3. So our hopeful selves say, oh, I can get that done in a day. Never say that. You do 1 times 3, okay, 3 days. And then you might be close, basically. And that's just to get the first iteration out, right? Then you've got an iterative process, which I alluded to earlier, which is this is iterative. You have to get it out to the real users. They have to give you feedback. You can't be grumpy when you coded something you thought was great and the users think is dumb, right? So you've got to have this right attitude around iterations and making improvements even after it can be kind of tiresome. And then finally, even if it's been out there for a year, what if the plant list changes? What if the region, the Army Corps changes the way they're doing business or requiring what you submit to them? Now you're looking at maintenance and having to go back and update. And I often believe that people don't add that into their budgeting and into their idea of how much software costs while they're planning for a greenfield, exciting, hopeful project to meet all their needs.
Kristen, can I chime in on that? And just being the customer success person here, I think the other thing that often gets overlooked is training.
Oh,
so you got this wow now, really cool new thing, but who's training up the field people? Who's training up the PMs how to use the software? How's that getting rolled out? Do you have a dedicated group who's going to handle that? I think that's a true hidden cost, and a lot of confusion can ensue when that's not taken into account when you're developing a new platform for a group.
I would also say along the lines of Jeff's people process technology, and what we've learned is it's not really all about the technology. It's do you have your processes standardized, like Jeff was alluding to, right? And that is a process in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that needs to be accounted for. So why not focus on your processes and focus on getting people trained up right instead of having to focus on actually also building the technology?
So true.
Question from AJ, how do you factor in technology upgrades?
Yeah, exactly. So we factor them in like, uh-oh, we got to get this going. Uh-oh, iOS just shipped a brand new version of their OS and now the photos act differently. We now have to spend a massive amount of development resources to support that. I don't know if I think that's what you meant, AJ, in terms of devices upgrading. It's a really good point. That's something
Yeah, and I'll add to that, as a software vendor with multiple customers, it's almost like crowdsourcing. So we're getting information from our customers about things that are changing, and we're quickly able to disseminate that to everybody. Whereas if you're in a single silo company, you might not have that opportunity to stay ahead of the ball. So I think that's a really interesting thing to pay attention to.
It really is. And on to AJ's point as well, you know, part of the software company is doing what's called backward compatibility testing. So do you have people who even have time to do that, right? Like, first off, do you have QA, QC people? And then do you have time to test on do the old iPads still work? Don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. And I think you have to think about, if you're going to build your own, you have to think about the entire stack too. It's not just your devices that, you know, had come out with new OSs. I mean, you've got, you know, some bug fixes for whatever database that you've chosen. You know, how do you roll those in? There are ways to mitigate that, obviously, by going with managed services that sit in the cloud, but still managing that entire stack and everything. And by the way, there's a cost. If you go to managed services, those cost more. So, you know, all those things that sort of come together, you know, sort of the quality, the time, and the cost factors all sort of come together, and you're always going to be trading something off when you decide to build your own.
Great summary, Jeff. I think that's a good cue for me to wrap it up. We're almost to 11:30 already.
Wow.
And I want to share my screen again. So here's the cost, quality, or cost, time, and quality that Jeff was talking about. Look, we've all been down the wrong road, probably many times. Sometimes it's easy to figure out and turn around. Sometimes there's forces that make it harder to pivot and cut your losses. But the bottom line is, one size does not fit all. There's a spectrum of solutions, from a single app through customizable platforms and all the way up to your pure customization. And then you have to balance out that quality, cost, and time. So really, we don't have the answers, but we have walked a lot of people through the questions, and we would love to talk to you about where you are. We're inviting you to a free consultation to work through our worksheet of questions and help you weigh the options that are available to you, considering your people, your process, and your technology. If you'd like to join us for a chat, you can reach out to Jeff or Kristen or myself. The addresses are here on the screen, and I'll also put them in the chat. And then just to wrap it up, I want to thank you again for joining us for our 30-minute webinar. Watch out for future episodes. Next month, we have a regulator's perspective on the wetland regulatory compliance and technologies. And then the following month, we have a cultural resources expert talking about the digital transformation. And so now, as we normally do, I'm going to turn the screen over to Nancy, who will show you what this all looks like in Wildnote, a high-level view, and some of the features that make us industry-specific, catering to environmental compliance. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I'll just, Nancy, while you get started, something I think a lot about as the CEO of this company, and it's how can you leverage Wildnote for a competitive advantage? And we built a platform so that you can leverage Wildnote for a competitive advantage. So unlike an app, one size fits all, we're not like that. I'm trying to remember the fairy tale, but it's like, this chair's too big. This chair's
Goldilocks.
this chair's just right. We've tried to build the just right platform, not too narrow, not too broad, and it fits just right, basically. And so we have amazing set of users that we call wild nerds that have figured out how to utilize our platform for their competitive advantage through creativity and an understanding of the platform and an understanding of the problems they're trying to solve. So take it away, Nancy.
Nice,
Yeah,
Kristen.
thank you. That's a beautiful segue. So we invite any of you who can stay on for just a quick overview if you've not seen the platform before. So thank you for sticking around in that case. So Wildnote, as has already been alluded to, we are a cloud-based platform that's comprised of both a web application and a corresponding app that you use for data collection in the field that works offline on both Android and iOS devices. So the Wildnote flow is to start on the web application, and we have a project-based program where you and we did that purposely because we recognize that environmental consultants and permittees are working on a project. And what's in a project? It's the people working on the project. It's the survey forms that you're using for that project. It's the supporting documentation that you need for that project. All of those things are tied together. It's taxonomy that you need for that project. So you start with a project and you end with a project. So you can see here on my screen right now, tell me if we're not, are you seeing it, Rini?
Yeah.
Just making sure. Okay, good. So you can see this is a collection of project cards, and then we can dive into a specific project. So let's go into this construction project. If we click over here on this go to drop-down menu, this will give you the menu choices for the various things and functionalities that you can achieve with Wildnote. And one of the nice things that I like about Wildnote is that we do try to keep it pretty simple and elegant without a lot of hidden things that you don't know about. And obviously, as we grow and develop more features, we have to keep that in mind so that you can take advantage of those great things. So when you're setting up a project, you've got these top level things here, your basic project info. We have a concept called locations where you can tie into, you can put into the system a list of locations that you might want to tie into for your reporting purposes. For example, we were just on a call with a company who does a lot of restoration work. They have particular success criteria that they need to meet, and they're looking at plots as their locations. So they're going to tie into our location concept. They're going to use that plot, they're going to use plots as locations, and then over their 10-year lifespan of their project, they'll be able to compare year over year against data against a certain plot. Then you've got survey forms. So again, going back to what Kristen said in terms of making this your competitive advantage, you can build any kind of form that you want to build. There's a lot of lovely tools within that. You can do hide and show rules. You can, just coming into here, you can do conditional default, fill in values. You can utilize our form builder for really creative purposes that aren't just for field data collection. It can be general things like vehicle inspections. If you're a wild nerd and you're traveling around the country as a shovel bum for cultural resources management, you might have an RV form that you use, and that's a real story. So within here, you can see that we've got a project library. Here's all the forms that you might be using for a particular project. You've got a company library, which is going to be the collection of things that are built out. Jeff was talking earlier about standardization, right? So if you're in a mid-sized company and you want to standardize across all of your offices, wow, you can tap into this company library concept, and as your people build things, then they can be used across all offices. Then we have the Wildnote library, which is an ever-increasing and very robust list of forms based on the kind of work that you folks do. So everything from groundwater to all the different bioassessments. I just put a tree inventory in yesterday. We talked about crowdsourcing before, like we're constantly talking with people and hearing what their needs are. I have a BAT form ready to go in here. So those types of things are getting built out all the time. Construction monitoring, which is really such a win for this platform. It's a no-brainer to use Wildnote for that purpose, as you can see. So very robust, a lot of cultural forms in. And then of course we have our whole wetland suite as well. So we have everything from build it yourself, which is where you can get some competitive advantage, to, hey, right out of the box, you can come in here and use our cultural forms. You can use our phase 1 ESA and our wetland forms, just like boom, you're ready to go. You can practically be, collecting your data on your wetland forms the next day. That's how quickly you can get started. So we have that concept, and then let me show you a little bit of what the mobile platform looks like.
If I could, Nancy, while you're
yeah.
setting that up, I think it's important to stress the amount of work and effort, ongoing work and effort that goes into building and maintaining a library like this. And I'm not saying that to pat ourselves on the back, but I'm saying that to the fact that if you're an environmental consulting organization and you're thinking of going and building, your own solution, not only do you have to, build sort of your survey form builder and your database and your report generator, even if you use other things like Fulcrum, et cetera, you now have to go design and build all of these forms. And so it's probably better to think about, look what I could get if I start from here, where I'm getting, taking advantage of work that lots of other people have done in the industry. I can take these forms, then go create my own customized forms that are specific to me and my process. But I'm not starting from ground zero. I'm starting from something that's like 95% of the way there. And it's very simple to take those next steps. So the value in this, I hope is obvious to everybody that's still listening.
That's such a great point, Jeff. Thank you for jumping in on that.
Sure.
It kind of goes back to Kristen's 80-20 rule, right? Like,
without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly. So use your 20% of your time to really hone in on exactly what you need. So this is just a little a demo of what the application looks like on the mobile side. So you can see a couple of the projects that you saw in the previous window. We touch into construction compliance. Here's the list of all of the forms that are available for this particular project, way more than would normally be available for a project. Although I can think of one project that's got a lot of forms that you can pick from. And then you would just pick the form that you're interested in collecting data for, and then start collecting data. And from there, you can see that it's just a very nice, clean interface that you can utilize. We have a very robust taxonomy framework, and you can hook into that for any of your forms. In addition to that, we have a concept called taxon favorites. So as you pick taxonomy within a project, that populates to the top and turns green, as you can see here. You can build your own sub-taxonomy lists based on our big lists that are in, and we're constantly adding to those. We just added a San Diego butterfly list a few months ago for Kino checker spot monitoring down in the San Diego area. So we're again crowdsourcing and constantly adapting to the kinds of things that people need. Back over here on the web platform, on the project data side, this is everywhere that you would come for your QA, QC, and export. So we've tried to build a few different ways for you based on your own personal workflows for looking at data, doing your QA, QC on that data, and then we have a very robust export framework. So we have something called the editable grid, which allows you to see your data in a pivoted form. I think I have data in this. Let's see. Yeah. So this is a SWIP form. There's a lot of, if you've ever done SWIP work, there's a lot of data in SWIP. So if you go through and look at the different tabs, you'll be able to see all of your data in one view. And then make edits to some of that data within this view as well. In addition to that, we have a gallery. So photo management is a big pain point. So if you're building your own, application, make sure to take that into account, because that's a huge, as we've learned over the years, it's probably one of the biggest time sucks that there are. So this is a gallery view within Wildnote. These photos are dynamically linked to the data that they came from. So if I click here, it'll take me right to that survey. We can search the captions. This was absolutely crowdsourced from someone who does a lot of SWIP work. And they said, boy, we really need to be able to search the captions for particular BMPs. So we included that in the platform so that you can quickly drill into your data. We will rename all your photos for you. And we have people with thousands and thousands of photos in here, and they just click the button and your photos will get renamed for you, at least contextually to your project. From there, exporting, and you can see the variety of exports. I think we have about 16 different export types now. So everything from a really nicely formatted, quick survey PDF that incorporates your photos and is a great deliverable, pivot table if you're crunching your data, photos only, KML if you need to get into Google Earth, and then specific industry exports for cultural, for wetland work, and then specific GIS compatible exports as well. So you can take your data right into Esri products or QGIS if you're using that with a GDB export or a GeoJSON export. So Rini, Kristen, Jeff, anything to add that you'd like to highlight? I'd like to keep this at about 15 minutes. So.
Yeah, it's not for the demo, but we've alluded to it a couple times, and we've talked about the crowdsourcing and stronger together, right? So the more of us, we're building technology based on our customers' feedback. We're a customer-driven organization, and so the more customers we have, the more feedback and the more we can build to improve the process of environmental compliance. And we're very excited. We're a mission-driven organization. We believe by making environmental compliance more efficient and effective, it actually protects our resources better, these natural resources that we covet so dearly in our hearts. So just want to throw that in there.
Rini, anything to wrap up?
I just want to thank you panelists and thank our viewers. It's been really fun to put this together and explore the aches and pains and possible solutions. I really hope some folks will reach out for that free consultation. And, we're not saying Wildnote is the solution. We just want to walk through the questions and see what's out there available for you. So please give us a call. Jeff put in, thank you for doing that, Jeff. Thank you for putting in our email addresses in the chat.
You bet.
And you can always find contact information on our website at wildnoteapp.com. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great week, and I hope we get to talk to you.